on, chill.
Welcome back to another episode of Nerds on Ice, where cool nerds get fired up on today's hot topics. As always, I'm your host, Chris Fury, and let's meet our cool nerds for the evening. When there isn't a pandemic going on, Greg Mandryk is an actor and playwright behind Bloody Little Pieces. He loves video games and saw Army of Darkness in theaters 7 times. By the way, that movie was only in the theaters for about 2 weeks. Thanks for coming on, Greg.
Thank you for having me.
Lisa Hirzel is in her 27th year of molding the next generation of nerds in the Cleveland area. Her geekdom is primarily music and theater, but gets lost in a good movie or TV series or knitting pattern just as easily. Lisa is married to Tim. They have 4 adult children, and since the fall, they are experiencing empty nesting for the first time. Thank you for coming on, Lisa. Stuart Hoffman is a professional baker in Cleveland. Part of his love is for movies involves the absurdity of storytelling. He likes doing deep dives on particular actors or writer-director bodies of work, and he can list most Best Picture Oscar winners. He loves making lists just for the satisfaction of crossing things off. Thanks for coming on, Stuart.
Thank you.
Finally, we have Keli Schimelpfenig. Keli loves gardening and growing rare vegetables, so she gets lots of side-eye from her nail person every suspicious delivery of beans or rare seeds she receives from an international heirloom seed swap she belongs to. Thanks for coming on, Keli.
Thanks for having me.
I hope I got your name right.
Yes, you did.
All right.
At least just fine.
Okay. Tonight's hot topic is about reboots, remakes, and spinoffs, with shows like the Netflix series The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina and the new streaming NBC service Peacock airing a new Saved by the Bell series. One has to ask, has Hollywood run out of ideas, or are some of these series a breath of fresh air? So we'll start that off. There's many shows over time that have remakes, reimaginings of that nature, and Sabrina is one of those shows. What is your take on seeing some of these, and do you have a favorite? Do you have something that is something you would prefer not to touch? Greg, we'll start with you.
Well, Sabrina, sure, that was kind of an interesting little thing on was that Netflix?
Yes.
I thought that was okay for 2 seasons. Wasn't a big fan of the original. See, things I wouldn't touch. That we've already made so many of them. Ghostbusters wouldn't touch. Actually, I can only count on like one hand the number of movies that I think actually, when you say, hey, did you see that movie, people actually think the remake, like The Fly, The Thing, and that's it. I can really not think of anything else that comes close to King Kong. No one thinks Peter Jackson. that had like 2 years, and then all right, we're back to thinking of the old one. It's
I said right.
I mean, it's a neat trick. You kind of have to figure out what could be improved upon, and what was such a hit because of its original chemistry that you don't dare screw with it. Like, I wouldn't try screwing with like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. It's one of my favorite movies. I mean, it's so much Robert Redford and Paul Newman, just what they're doing. I wouldn't even attempt to do that. Princess Bride, they said they were doing a remake, but what they did was actually cute. Just the little home video thing that they had. I wouldn't try an actual remake of that. It's just some things, yeah, they just shouldn't be touched, and some things you really have to go for what could be improved upon.
Okay, yeah, Lisa, what do you think?
I really, he's right. There's some things you can't mess with. But I have to say, like, I've been really enjoying all the Star Trek remakes and reboots and changes, and even like the fan stuff like Lower Decks. I guess when you're a Star Trek fan, you kind of reach out and love all the different versions of it. But they some of them they can laugh at themselves, or I don't know. There's so many different stories that you can tell through Star Trek, and prequels and sequels and redos that I've been enjoying that one. Also, don't touch Laverne and Shirley. That's my don't touch. Do not. That's one of those ones that it's like you said, like Greg said about Butch Cassidy. You can't mess with the chemistry. If you can't have Penny Marshall, you can't do it. Don't touch that.
Stuart.
Yeah. Geez, first off, I don't watch much TV. I'm more of a movie person, but now and again, I try to watch something like Haunting the Bly Manor, which sometimes I find it a hard time considering some things an actual remake if it's actually originally based on a novel. You can go back to the novel and it's considered, oh, it's a new adaptation of the novel. And then you take remakes, reboots, requels, which I've heard of. I understand the like producer side of things, taking some material that already has a built-in audience, because then you'll have the people that love it or hate it, they now want to see it, even if they will hate it, so they can at least see, oh, how are you going to mess with something that I love so much. But also it could make you reappreciate the original material in the first place even more. I've certainly felt that way about, there's a movie, one of my favorite movies called Sleuth from the 70s. And then when I heard they're remaking it, and I thought, why? But then when I looked at all of the things, the director, the writer, the cast, all the choices seemed like very smart choices, but I still didn't like it. It just didn't work the same way, but I still love the original so much. But it's also a way to introduce new audiences to something that they might not even know are remakes. And then they can go back to that original thing and maybe like it more. And a lot of those are remakes from foreign films, like The Birdcage. One of the best comedies of the 90s is actually a remake of one. And some of these remakes, I think, can really benefit from maybe not even a reimagining, but just, they gender swap the characters, like when they remade Dirty Rotten Scoundrels into The Hustle and just swap the genders, or Overboard, swap the genders. Like I looked at one of the links you sent where they're potentially remaking License to Drive, but swapping the genders, which License to Drive is one that, like, I had that taped on off of HBO. I had it on the same VHS as like Stay Tuned and like Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and watched it over and over again. But License to Drive is not like a household name like Casablanca. You rewatch it and I go, yeah, you can remake that. I love the original, but go for it, have fun. On some things that I wouldn't want to touch, like Butch Cassidy is one of my favorite movies, but following that, The Sting, classic con artist movie from the 70s, one of my favorites. Again, with the whole chemistry vibe. A movie like All the President's Men is also one of my favorites, which to me can't really be remade because at the time it came out, it was right after Nixon's actual, resignation. So to have that, it just wouldn't connect with an audience the same way. Just watch the original. The way it like fit in with the world at the time. That's something that sometimes it just depends on who is in charge of the production. Like I saw, they're going to do Labyrinth, a remake of Labyrinth. Why? But then I saw, forgive me if I mispronounced the name, Fede Alvarez is behind it, the one who was in charge of remaking Evil Dead and did Don't Breathe. That makes me go, okay, I'm against remaking the Labyrinth, but I really want to see what he does with it. So a lot of it depends on who's in charge. So I'm kind of like a little bit of both worlds. Like if I trust people behind it, I want to see what they do with it. So I'm okay with people exploring, even if my gut says, you know what, it might suck. I can always go back to the original that I love so much. But, I'm all for people exploring. There's the question of lack of original material. Are we taking things away from writers? In a way, we're not, because writers of today are still reinterpreting other people's material. We've been doing it for forever as artists.
Right. So, Keli, what do you stand on that?
So I guess it depends. For me, it's all about the story, and that's, the story is always going to be the king. So it depends on what you're going to do with that story and how the remake is done. So, for example, something like Sabrina, I was okay with that because it was a different story remake, and they were bringing in new ideas, with the old. But one of the other things that I think about is along with the stories, if you're going to be updating something so that it's, a remake or, and something that's set more in modern times, why are you doing that? And are you telling the story so that it's made to be more inclusive, more representational of what our friend groups look like today? For example, Saved by the Bell, they actually did a really good job at mixing it up back then. Where if you look at a lot of the shows from the 80s, it's either like a completely whitewashed family or, a black comedy. And those were kind of the two genres. So I kind of enjoy some of these remakes that are coming out and they're playing with things and they're doing, being much more inclusive about casting choices. And you'll see people with disabilities, you'll see people of all colors and skin types. One of the remakes that I got pulled into was Party of Five, and I wasn't a fan of the original, but man, I love the message of the new one because they took that material and completely, making it with the Latin family was just brilliant in the way that they did that. So, in a situation like that, I almost think that the TV genre is better suited for remakes in some way. On the other flip of that coin, going to Labyrinth, oh my gosh, for the love of God, don't touch David Bowie. I know they're probably talking about Lady Gaga for the role. Honestly, I can't envision anyone else doing it but Lady Gaga because it seems like she's the, stand-in Bowie of our times in a way. But don't. Like that to me is the untouchable one. But yeah, it's got to have a purpose and a reason.
So let's touch on that. Stuart mentioned reimaginings, and you have production houses like Blumhouse who are taking certain liberties, changing the outcome of certain film, older films like The Invisible Man or Fantasy Island. You now have a new movie coming out it's out now, called Freaky, starring Vince Vaughn, where they've taken the Freaky Friday aspect and changed it and twisted it on his head as he's a serial killer who is now in the body of a teenage girl and vice versa. And here you have these reimaginings, and it's funny that Stuart mentions these, and Kelly, you mentioned them. Tell me, what is it that you see? You're already talking about it depends on who's behind the camera and who the cast is. So Stuart, let's go from there. Let's find out, what is it that what gets your gold? Is that what gets you going? Is the reimagining and finding out who's behind the camera? Is it the writing? If you know who the writer is, what makes you say, okay, I might want to check that out, or I might not want to check that out?
I guess sometimes it just depends on what it is that is being reimagined. Like something like when you mentioned the Freaky, which I haven't seen the movie. I forget if it's actually out yet. But when I hear, oh, they're remaking Freaky Friday, okay, well, who's in it? And oh, it's like serial killer bent. I'm like, oh, well, I'm a horror fan, so I'm like, oh, you're going that route. That's cool. Yeah, I'll go with that.
What about the Banana Splits movie? Have you heard of that?
That one I'm not too familiar with. I know of it, but
they've made a Banana Splits movie, from the da 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 da, except it's a horror flick where the animals, they're like animatronics, and because their show's getting canceled, they've all gone crazy, and now it's like Five Nights at Freddy. They're going to start trying to kill people.
Oh God, no,
It's
I'm not
actually
with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's like no, wait, what are you doing? No, okay, well, I'll see it, but no.
I was gonna say anything with banana, I probably want to watch it. Like I don't.
It depends on like some sort of clout that, like, one of the examples I wrote down about something I might not want touched is Monster Squad, but if someone like Taika Waititi is behind it, I'm like, well, if someone with like that sort of clout and background, I trust them. And that's me as just a big movie nerd who the average person might not know, oh, who directed that. I'm only seeing it if it's someone that I trust. No, a lot of people just go see the movies and might not know. Or you take something like A Star is Born, which has now been remade several times. I first go, all right, well, who's the singer? Who are the singers? Who's behind it? Yeah, that's just something for me that I go with.
And of course, Taika Waititi, he did a movie where he played Adolf Hitler as some kid's invisible friend, and you're like, well, nobody should do that. And then, Jojo Rabbit turned out to be brilliant. It's like, okay, fine, whatever Taika Waititi does, sure, I'll watch that.
So otherwise it would just be a matter of maybe not just who's behind it. If it's something that that in my opinion could merit a remake, like something like Logan's Run is something that I thought was dated the first time I ever saw it. And so I thought, yes, please remake this and make it better. Or something like, Ginger Snaps, where it says that might be expanded into a limited series or something. I'm like, ooh, well, that was something that I thought was very character driven in the first place, but focused a little too much on the gore. Like, yeah, let's see that expanded. And it's like, I know I'm not exactly answering the question, because for me, so much of it is a case-by-case basis.
What do you think, Lisa?
Definitely who's behind it matters, and I don't really know names as much. I tend to just kind of experience it organically. So for me, I'll watch something that was a remake. Like I'm showing my age, but I really grew up, with the old Ghostbusters. And then the new Ghostbusters came out a few summers ago, and I went with my sisters and my daughters, and we all went. We were like, girl power. And I thought, man, please don't suck. Please be good. Please be good, because I really want this to be good. And it really, I liked it because of the way that they incorporated the old actors and they used the old writers. And I like the way that they paid tribute to it. But the writing is really important. And like Keli said, story is king. So as long as it tells a good story, and then that's what's going to matter to me, whether I enjoy the whole piece or not.
Okay, so we've touched on. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, sometimes it's a double-edged sword trying to please old and new audiences, where if you're too faithful to the original, it'll feel like, the remake of Psycho.
Yeah.
Where it was just, well, what was the point of that? But then if you change it too much, then you annoy people who love the. It's like how do you make changes that are just changes enough to satisfy? You can't satisfy everyone, but that's what people want to do anyway.
Yeah. So we've touched on the remakes, we've touched on the reimaginings. Now let's talk about the spinoffs. From classic television like All in the Family, which spinned off into the Jeffersons. For more Happy Days, you had Mork and Mindy, Laverne and Shirley. You had these shows. Now you have Blackish, which spinned off into Youngish, which spinned off into Mixedish, and is now going to be spinned off into Oldish, which is the mother and the grandmother and grandfather getting remarried and moving on and experiencing life as a married couple again. So does it pay to have certain spinoffs depending on the cast, the writing, once again?
Yes, for Blackish, for sure. I'm excited for the new one. I like all of the spinoffs of that show because, again, it's the writing, it's the storytelling, it's the whole group that puts that show together. Makes you love all the different versions of it.
Great.
I wish I had an opinion on this. I have seen none of these shows. When I think of good spin-off shows, Better Call Saul, maybe. I guess it depends on the original show. Are we just done to wrap up the story, and there are other stories to tell out of that, or did we wrap it up because everyone lost interest? I mean, Walking Dead, for instance. I mean, we've got a whole bunch of those. But is anybody watching that anymore? I have no idea.
I don't think so. Somebody is, because they keep making them.
We stopped watching the original Walking Dead, but we're into Fear the Walking Dead now.
Oh, okay. I got to like season 3 or 4, and okay, they're gonna go to someplace else. It's gonna seem safe for a while, then it's not going to be, and then it's chaos, and then they're gonna go to someplace that seems safe for a while, then chaos.
Keli,
Yeah.
Keli, what do you got on that?
I'm pro spinoff because, and I'm excited for some of the ones that I've heard. Punky Brewster, for example. That was my youth, and man, to think about a new generation experiencing that show in a different way, and I just loved everything that show was about at the time when I was younger. So yeah, I'm I think for the most part pro spinoff, because a lot of the times spinoffs are already going to be they're coming off of a successful entity. You know, no one's going to really be making a spinoff off of a completely unsuccessful show. Well, I mean, unless it's like on, you know, Walking Dead, which that is just unexplainable to begin with why that is still on. But those spin-offs, you know, they're coming from a place of love and characters that we have, you know, connected with in some way. So yeah, for sure, definitely pro spin-off. You know, one of the ones that I look at, you know, along with Punky Brewster, that I just saw, the new generation is getting is Babysitter's Club, which is another completely total 80s series that I think I read every single book at least once or twice. And to see that like kind of coming back for a new generation, and it's material that should be coming back in terms of, you know, in that crazy 80s pop culture genre, you know, that was very, very specific. But you know, at the same time, I think it's good to see the good stuff coming back. The stuff that merits, you know, another go, or you know, that they can take those characters and they're probably really interesting adults. I want to see who Punky Brewster is as an adult. Like who how did she turn out? Like what is, you know, what's her career? What is, you know, I want to experience that, and I'm sure, you know, kids want to experience that too. And you know, Lisa, you can probably, you know, speak to that. You could probably, you know, think about watching a show like that with your grandkids. So future grandkids, I should say.
I'm excited to see Soleil Moonfry come back and play herself again. Like
right, right, yeah.
And I'm very excited about that.
Yeah,
Here's the thing though: is it something that we think kids are going to want to see, or are these things being released so that people who grew up then can like, hey kids, here's my childhood, let me shove this down your throat?
I think that we're not going to be able to make it the way it was. Every time something comes back from the 80s, or you know, it comes back from my childhood, and I'm like, man, you can't tell that story now. Like it's in a different time, but they're not. I know that they're going to rewrite Punky Brewster to land in 2020, you know, or to land at least somewhere around now, so that, you know, she can live the life that she's got now and not the life that she had with her socks not matching in 1986. You know.
And I think those marketers do such a good job at, you know, that's the kind of show where I think they market is like family viewing, because they have their own marketing campaign that's geared towards the younger generation, and then they have the marketing campaign that's geared towards the adults. And you don't really notice the difference between the two of them, because you're, you know, as a consumer, you just kind of, it blends in as like, oh, commercial for Punky Brewster. But there are subtle differences, and that's something that I've kind of noticed with some of the remakes, that they'll actually have 2 or 3 different versions of the commercial that you can tell are being aired at different times, trying to attract different groups of people. You know, social media, they'll, you know, Instagram, they're going to go towards that younger group, where Facebook, that's where they're going to be, you know, advertising towards the more parent group. So, yeah, I think they're doing interesting jobs at marketing that content.
That's marketing manager Keli. I would never have thought of any of that, but coming out of your mouth, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
Well, guys, this is great conversation. I hate to end it this way, but obviously we're going to get a lot more remakes, a lot more reimaginings, and a lot more spinoffs, no matter what we say or talk about, whether you like it, whether you like them or hate them. But we do have some of the few ones that are coming down the pipe that, like Greg said, are they something that it was our childhood and we're shoving it down our kids' throat, or is it something that you can share with them that they might turn into and say, hey, this isn't half bad, you know, I want to see more. But unfortunately we don't have the time, so I'm going to call this one, gang, but it's the end of our show. I want to thank our guests, and we want to do a quick rundown. So Greg, tell everybody where they can find you, what you're doing next.
I am waiting for a vaccine, and then I start worrying about what I'm doing next. Yeah, I'm doing this podcast, and then Who knows when the world gets back on its feet?
Stuart?
Right now, I'm a baker approaching the holiday season, so I'm very busy with that. Other than that, I'm just trying to have fun with Zoom readings of some plays just to have fun. I have a connection with a local radio theater that I've done some radio plays with them, so I'm still able to scratch my acting itch. So I'm thankful for that.
All right. Lisa?
I'm starring in a show that Miss Kelly is directing coming up at Christmas time called Scrooge in Rouge. I'm also trying to use that to figure out how to get my high school shows online in case we have to, cancel a third show in a row.
Oh, jeez. Kelly?
You can find me online at shinypennystudios.com. Things I have coming up is I'm actually a photographer, and I'm releasing my first calendar, which is called Dad Bod. Yeah, I know Lisa knows all about this.
Mine too.
Yeah. So does Tommy, who's behind the scenes here, but Dad Bods of Cleveland 2021, a year of Midwest sexy. And it is a charity calendar for Meals on Wheels and features 12 more than 12 men, but 12 months of glorious, glorious man bellies and shirtless men who, could probably pass on a few meals. So that's why we went with Meals on Wheels. There's kind of a little bit of play on things there, but yeah, you can find information on that at shinypennystudios.com.
And as you said earlier, our fearless leader, Tommy D, is also part of that calendar shoot. So thank you for bringing him in on that one.
He may or may not be one of my Mr. Octobers. Just saying.
Go ahead, flip that coin, Tommy. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming on. I'm your unforgettable and quite debonair protector and host, Chris Fury. And until next time, remember to educate yourself and others, entertain yourself and others, and empower yourself and others. And until then, Chris Fury out.
Everyone, chill.
Dad Bods of Cleveland 2021, a year of Midwest sexy. A calendar celebrating the princes of pierogi, the kings of the keg, and the brotherhood of bad jokes. Benefiting Meals on Wheels, each calendar purchase will cover a day of meals for a local senior in need. Shipping will begin December 1st, 2020. For more information, go to shinypennystudios.com or Shiny Penny Studios on Instagram and Facebook.
To hear all of our podcasts, look for Circle of Nerds on iTunes, iHeart, Pandora, Spotify, or wherever you get podcasts. And if you want to see these weirdos in their natural habitat, just look for Circle of Nerds on YouTube and Patreon. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.